For the past 3 years, Mayor Walsh has been making headway on the need for more housing. The tougher challenge is providing more units beyond Boston's luxury zone, but also without fueling more displacement. That certainly applies to guidelines being considered for parts of Jamaica Plain and Roxbury near the Orange Line. To tell us why some people who live in those areas want the city's plan to include more units that are affordable are two members of the group Keep It 100 for Real Affordable Housing, Danielle Sommer and Sisi. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Hi.
First, I want to start with Sisi because you don't live in this area anymore, but you lived there until recently. So what's the story we need to know about that?
So I grew up in Roxbury. Well, I grew up there from about the time I was like 10 to recently when I turned 16. And that was my neighborhood, and then our landlord there kept raising rents, and it eventually got to where my mom could not afford it. And so one of the options that we had was to move out of state, and that was really something that I didn't want to do and that the family didn't want to do. So we ended up getting moved to a friend's house that we now live in and rent from her in Mattapan.
Now, I know living with friends is kind of, day to day, it's uncertain.
Well, she moved out and gave us the house as a favor because we couldn't afford where we were staying anymore.
What was it like? I mean, you're in the middle of high school, and isn't that disruptive for you between school and friends and even relatives, maybe?
Yeah, it was definitely. Because I grew up there, I had definitely made my community there. I was very much a part of the community center there and my friends there, and so moving away from all that, especially so far out, was like a big deal for me. And I actually still really miss my old neighborhood. But I was homeschooled, so it wasn't really a big deal for me to move as far as schooling went.
Danielle, you're still there, but I guess you're worried, and I guess that's why you're involved in this campaign?
Yeah, so I grew up in Eggleston Square, and I think in a lot of ways I'm kind of this classic story that Boston strives to create. I went to Boston Public Schools. I went to school out of state, actually, and I decided to come back. And initially I was in Eggleston Square, and at a point I too was priced out for a little while, and then some things sort of shifted in my own family's dynamics, and so I am back. But while my housing is secure, I think we're both working on this because we recognize that, well, aside from the fact that we believe that housing is a human right, we recognize that there are so many other people like us who have stories like us, certainly in Eggleston Square, in Jackson Square, kind of near where you lived, but really across Roxbury and Jamaica Plain and the whole city. And we're really concerned about ensuring that the city provides housing for everybody, that we're able to keep a lot of economic diversity. We think that's really important for any city. Obviously, if you think about like who runs a city, who functions for it, right? It's everyone from the mayor to the doctors who run our hospitals, to the janitors that clean up, to the teachers, to bus drivers. All of these people are really, really critical, and yet we're not able to pay janitors the way that we're paying doctors or the mayor. But those janitors still need a place to live. Those bus drivers still need a place to live because they're a critical function of our community, of our city. And what we're asking for is basically to ensure that we have more housing for really everyone, from those folks making minimum wage all the way up.
Danielle, the city's talking about these guidelines allowing for something like 2,500 new units of housing in this area. And they say 40% would be what they call affordable, maybe a combination of low and middle income. How does that stack up against, well, the average person living in these neighborhoods?
Right. So it's actually, it's almost 4,000 units of housing, which is essentially doubling the population within this targeted area. Within that, there are requirements. Some are for private developers, and some are for nonprofits that are able to provide a lot higher levels of affordability. Our concern is that what we're calling affordable, the income limits or minimums that people need to make in order to get access to those affordable units, really don't truly reflect the people who have need, and specifically in this area. So in the Plan JP Rocks overall, the average household is making about $35,000. Within Eggleston Square, it's about $26,000. In the plan overall, about 70% of households make $75,000 or less. The affordable housing, or the affordable units rather, are made for families making about $70,000, with a smaller amount of housing for people who make between about $30,000 to $70,000. That doesn't really reflect our community. It doesn't actually reflect the needs of really the city overall. I mean, the average worker in the city makes $35,000. The average family of four in the city is making about $54,000. We need to provide housing for those residents. We need to provide security for them. And certainly we want to encourage and welcome new people, including people making more than $75,000 a year. I think there's a lot of really positive outcomes when you have economic diversity. But we shouldn't be focusing building our housing for people who make, or for families that make over $120,000 a year. And that's just a simple numbers problem. Since that's only about 13% of our actual population in the city overall, it shouldn't be the majority of the housing that we build.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Danielle Sommer and Sisi Henry from Keep It 100 for Real Affordable Housing. Sisi, what about some ideas to make it possible for more of the housing in this area, the new housing, to be really affordable for people? I mean, how do you make that money? Where do you find the money to make that work?
So we've been having different discussions with people from the city, and we've come up with a couple different ideas.
What about it? I mean, maybe getting more land into control of nonprofits or something like that?
Yeah, we certainly encourage that. Like land banking would certainly be one way to help support nonprofits. There's also, a variety of creative financial solutions that could happen. And certainly there's been a variety of ideas floated, from some kind of speculator tax to thinking about how to use our new community, our CPA money to help support that. And certainly that's one place where the city has said, like, we have a need, and let's address at least a portion of that money. And we're very happy to hear that. That's a really encouraging sign. We just think that there are some ways to help do more. One portion is lowering the income requirements for families, at least in a portion of the plan, to give a better coverage of people who already live here. Another piece would be to work to potentially convert market rate housing into affordable housing, which is not necessarily building new stock, but it's still helping to provide that balance as we get new stock. And the city has, I think, they would like to see that happen, and what we would be interested in having them do is set a concrete number. I think it's hard to achieve a goal if you don't know what you're shooting for.
So you must be talking to a lot of people your age, high school, or maybe even a little older, who've been going through all this disruption. What's it been like talking to them, hearing their stories?
We've definitely held a bunch of events where I've talked to a whole bunch of my friends that have gotten moved out. I know friends of mine who've had to move out of state and no longer around because their parents couldn't afford the market rent here. It kind of hurts me personally because it is my friends and my peers and people that I've known growing up moving out due to the same thing that we are fighting for. So it actually makes me also really proud to be part of this act in making a change for better affordable housing in Boston and in the JP and Roxbury community.
Well, we should finally mention, Danielle, if people want some more information about Keep It 100, you've got something on Facebook maybe they can check out?
Yeah, you can check out our Facebook page, or you can go to keepit100boston.org. It's keepit100boston.org, and that will give you a lot of information about what we're asking for, as well as sort of an overview of the plan overall.
Thank you both very much, Danielle Sommer and Sisi Henry from Keep It 100.